With the year 2025 having arrived, it's time to start looking forward to what the upcoming NRL season could bring us. So I put out a call to my followers on both YouTube and Instagram to rank your most bold predictions on what's in store for us this year. To rank these predictions, I've come up with 4 different categories. To signify the hottest possible predictions, I've gone with Ripped Shirt Dominic Young, because of course I have. Followed closely by Captain Fantastic Cameron Murray, whose sparkling blue eyes just won't quit. For the next category, I wanted to go with the single most common looking individual in the entire NRL. A guy whose hotness could only be described as lukewarm. The kind of guy you would genuinely see hundreds of while walking around the Gold Coast, and that's got to be AJ Brimson. Then lastly, for the least hot possible category, there was only ever going to be one acceptable answer, and that is, of course, post-match Cam McInnes. So with the categories being established, without further ado, let's get into it. Starting off with Luke Cordner on YouTube, we've got James Fisher-Harris will bring the culture over from Penrith and lead the Warriors to another top 4 finish. And Luke wasn't the only one who's high on the Warriors this year, with TOTN17 saying Warriors will make the grand final. I mean, this is definitely bold. I think this might almost immediately be Ripped Shirt Dom Young. I do have every confidence that Fisher-Harris is going to play the role that he needs to play to get the Warriors up to that level. He's probably the best forward in the NRL. He captains the New Zealand national side, and when you hear the Panthers talk about the influence he has on the playing group, you can understand why he makes those around him so much better. Obviously in 2023 we saw a real cultural shift in the Warriors with Andrew Webster coming over from the Penrith Panthers. But while they did get really unlucky through 2024 in certain games, the fact is that they did go away from some of those principles. Fisher-Harris will go a long way towards getting those principles back, but on paper, you do have to remember that he's only around as good as the guy he's replacing, Addin Fonua-Blake. So it's not like the Warriors are adding this generationally good forward to what they already had. And fundamentally, my concern is the halves. You know, while Tamaito Martin, Chanel Harris-Tavita, and Luke Metcalf are all solid first graders, none of them really stand out to me as halves that could take the Warriors deep into the finals. When they finished top 4 in 2023, Sean Johnson was probably the best player in the world, and we're not going to get that from one of these 3 guys. So I think straight out of the blocks, I'm going to give this one Ripped Shirt Dom Young level of hot take, because it's one I really can't see happening, much as I would love to. Next up from Kaiser DJT2604, we've got at least 2 Queensland teams in the top 8. See, my problem with judging this, and I've said this before, is that every single year I fall into the trap of just getting pretty much excited about everyone. There'll be 14 teams who I look at on paper and think, yep, that's a top 8 side. The only Queensland side to make the top 8 in 2024 was, of course, the Cowboys, and I don't see massive scope for them to regress. They are losing a heap of experience in the form of Carl Felt, Jake Granville, and Valentine Holmes, but realistically, those guys haven't been the leaders of that squad. For over a year now, the Cowboys have been led by Tom Dearden, Ruben Cotter, and to a lesser extent, Scott Drinkwater. Even Reece Robson now with his Origin experience. I don't see the Cowboys falling out of the 8. I do probably see the Broncos getting back into the 8. That's certainly where they should be given the side that they have. Despite performing really badly last year, I think their only weakness on paper really was that hooker position, and they've now got Ben Hunt to fill in there. So yeah, without having actually put together my top 8, I would expect the Cowboys and Broncos at least to be there, with the Dolphins and Titans still good teams on paper. Because of that, I wouldn't say it's the most bold prediction, but he did say at least 2 Queensland teams, so I'll give this one an AJ Brimson level of hotness. On Instagram, RL since 1908 says Newcastle for the spoon. Yeah, Newcastle are a weird one. In recent years, they've seemed to overperform relative to the side that they have on paper, particularly the spine. Kalen Ponga's actually a player who I've been less impressed by than most in recent years, but I've got to say last year he did absolutely prove me wrong. The only thing is, and I'm friends with a lot of Knights fans who all say this, Ponga just can't keep carrying them. The most important thing in an NRL side is the spine, and the Knights have reportedly already told Jaden Brayley that he's free to look elsewhere. Same with Jackson Hastings, who was their first choice halfback in 2023 but really fell out of favour in 2024. And they are probably the only side in the NRL who, heading into 2025, we genuinely don't know who their halves are going to be. It could literally be any combination of Phoenix Crosland, Jack Cogger, Tyson Gamble, Will Price. Even Jackson Hastings is still technically at the club. So to have up to 5 guys who all are relatively similar level to each other, none of whom really stand out as high quality NRL halves, is not a good sign. Spoon winners are traditionally really hard to predict, but I do see this being a bit of a tough year up in Newcastle, so I'll give this one an AJ Brimson. Moving on now, and we've got a heap of guys all saying Roosters to miss the top 8. And honestly, yeah, I mean, this is one I could definitely see happening. They were the entertainers in 2024, playing a very attack-focused style of footy, but their defense wasn't fantastic. They'd go into games knowing that they could win by outscoring the opposition, and next year that just won't be true. Joseph Manu, Joseph Suali'i, Luke Keary, Jadria Hargreaves, Sitili Tupanua, Terrell May, even Michael Jennings, who played 9 games for them last year. They are all gone, with Brandon Smith and Sam Walker also scheduled to miss the first half of the season at least through ACL injuries. In 2022 and 2023, the Roosters started the year really slowly and only snuck into the top 8 right towards the end of the year. It's a habit that they're known to fall into, and if they do that again this year, I've got no confidence that they've got the cattle to get them back into the finals. Honestly, I might be being a bit harsh here given that they've only missed the finals once under Trent Robinson, but I'm going to give this a Cameron McInnes level of hotness, just because I think it is probably something that I expect will happen. Another one that I saw a lot of was people saying that the Panthers are going to miss the top 4. And yeah, I'm sorry to tell you guys, the Panthers are not going to miss the top 4. Get off the hopium, this dominance still has a ways to go. The old adage was that teams couldn't win back-to-back premierships because they couldn't find the emotional hunger and the physical energy to climb that mountain 2 years in a row. But year after year, Penrith have just shown that they are simply not affected by that. Granted, they have now lost a lot of names that would have brought energy to that side. Guys like Stephen Crichton, Jerome Luai, and James Fisher-Harris. But even then, the leaders of this team are Nathan Cleary and Isaiah Yeo. Those guys are both still there and are going to be as inspirational as they've ever been. I think particularly Nathan Cleary, who having a rookie 5'8" next to him, and no longer having Jerome Luai, will look to individually go to a completely new level. Just in terms of the way he dominates the play in this team. But even then, you look at their player turnover. Jerome Luai is being replaced by Blaise Talangi, who's regarded as one of the brightest young halves talents in the game. Sunir Taruva will be replaced by Casey McLean, who's a teenage winger who scored 4 tries on debut for the Kiwis in the Pacific Championships. And while James Fisher-Harris will be more difficult to replace, Lindsay Smith was just called up to the Kangaroos postseason. The succession planning is absolutely there, and I do not see 4 teams that could finish above them this year. For that reason, this is straight up a rip shirt Dominic Young prediction. To predict the side that's won the last 4 premierships to miss the top 4 is borderline insanity. I say there's no chance. Then we had Adam Waters 9110 on YouTube saying the Sharks will win the comp in 2025, and Mealsy09 on Instagram saying Sharks win the premiership and grand final. The Sharks winning the premiership and the grand final at the same time is pretty bold, I'll give you that. But look, no, in all seriousness, this is one that I kind of like. Unlike the Warriors, the Sharks are keeping what they've got while adding a generationally good forward. I think a super high quality front rower has pretty much been the missing piece for the Sharks in recent years. They've never really managed to fill the gaps left by Andrew Fafita and Paul Gallen, but Adam Fanua-Blake can absolutely do that. Obviously, as with any star in a premiership winning team, it's going to take a big year from Nico Hines, but I'm a huge Hines enthusiast. It's going to be interesting to see whether there is any merit to the rumours that he might play 5'8" or even fullback this upcoming year. But he's never been a traditional halfback anyway, so it wouldn't really change his playstyle too much, I wouldn't think. They've got a really tight group there that has been super consistent for a number of years now. I'll give this one a Cam Murray because it is bold to predict someone other than pretty much Melbourne or Penrith to win the premiership, but the Sharks do have that credential about them, so not quite Dominic Young, but definitely a Cameron Murray. One of the more interesting ones that I was excited to get my teeth stuck into was from WuzzyFuzzy22 on YouTube saying England will win the first game against Australia in the upcoming Ashes over there. I'm going to get called a traitor in the comments section and might get deported from the country for saying this, but I'd be really happy to see that. And really, I don't think it's too far away from actually happening. That England side had a very dominant series over Samoa at the end of 2024. And although the Super League is struggling, there's a lot of English talent over here now that is starting to excel. The likes of Herbie Farnworth and Dominic Young are among the best outside backs in the NRL. I'm confident Lewis Dodd will come over to the NRL and do well. Kai Pearce-Paul is always improving. But probably the biggest factor, and this is super controversial for me to say, but it's just based on the impression I get, wearing the English international jersey means more to the England players than the Kangaroos jersey means to Australia. Now, before you all start booing, there is a bit of reason around me saying that, and it has to do with state of origin. The fact is that kids growing up in New South Wales or Queensland want to grow up and play for New South Wales or Queensland. That's the ultimate goal in representative footy for them. That's their dream. And it's why the ferocity and intensity of Origin is so brilliant. But the price you pay for that is that those kids aren't growing up necessarily dreaming of playing for Australia. It's a really nice bonus for them to be picked in the Kangaroos side, and there's certainly national pride around it, but it's not the same level as those England players. Because those guys did dream of growing up and playing for England. For them, that is their pinnacle. And obviously, the Kangaroos will have the better side on paper, but I think that motivation and passion does go a long way. And lastly, a prediction that we saw from the likes of Danny's World on YouTube, Retro Rugby League on Instagram, who's a fantastic page if you don't already follow him, and some completely unbiased stuff from Benji Marshall, the GOAT. Tigers to make the top 8 for the first time since 2011. This seems to sort of be the go-to bold prediction that people are coming up with this preseason, and while I'm not claiming to be the first person to have ever said it, I was definitely saying this before it became cool. They've added Jerome Luai, Sunia Taruva, Royce Hunt, Jack Bird, Terrell May. Honestly, the list does go on. And the exciting thing is that the Tigers will be adding that to the already pretty solid foundation of the likes of Jareem Buller, Lockie Galvin, and obviously Api Coruscant. Obviously, there was a lot of doom and gloom around the reporting of the Tigers having won their 3rd consecutive wooden spoon last year, and that has, as usual, continued throughout this offseason, but the Tigers won a quarter of their games last year. They only need to win another quarter of them to make the top 8, and are you telling me that the likes of Jerome Luai aren't going to bring that to the team? Especially when some of their younger players are going to have another preseason under their belt? This is a prediction I really like, and it is certainly bold, just given that they haven't made it since 2011, but it's definitely possible. A spine of Buller, Galvin, Luai, and Coruscant is among the better spines in the Premiership. And I know that sounds insane to say, but think about it. Really, the only spines that are objectively better would be Melbourne, Penrith, Brisbane. Beyond that, you're getting into the likes of Cronulla, Canterbury, or Manly, who have very good spines, but they're not objectively better than the Tigers. I am very high on the Tigers this year, and if there's a side that I want to see do very well, it's them. So I'm going to give this a Cam Murray. It's bold for sure, but it's a chance of happening, and that is certainly an exciting thing to watch for 2025. But that'll do us for this bold predictions video. Apologies if I didn't get to your prediction. There were nearly 100 responses, so I was just never going to get through all of them. If you've got any bold predictions heading into the 2025 season, leave them in the comments below. I'll respond to as many as I can, and we can get some debate going. If you did enjoy the video, feel free to subscribe. We're aiming for very big things in 2025, so it would help the channel massively. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.